In this demo, we will create a storage account in Azure. To create a storage account, we can click on the Create a Resource button, which is at the top left of the screen as a plus sign next to it. Now that we are on the Create a Resource page, we can search for storage account in the search bar at the top of the page, or we can find it on the list of popular Azure services on this page. We should see storage account in the search results. Click on that to start creating your storage account. Now, under the storage account option that says Microsoft below, there is a button that says Create. Click that to start the process of creating the storage account. We are now on the Create Storage Account page. This is where you'll configure your new storage account. You'll need to choose a subscription, resource group, storage account name, region, and other configurations. The first option we have is subscription. Choose the subscription that you have. The next option is resource group. We can create a new resource group or use an existing one. In this case, we will use the existing one. We need to choose a storage account name. This name must be unique across Azure. The next setting is region, and it is set to East US by default. Let's change the region to South Central US. Azure Blob Storage is for storing unstructured data like text or binary data. This is a good choice for uploading files. Azure Blob Storage is selected. The next setting is performance. It's currently set to standard, which is recommended for most scenarios. Premium is recommended for scenarios that require low latency. Let's choose standard as it's just a demo and we don't want to spend too much for the demo. The last option is redundancy, which is currently set to geo-redundant storage or GRS. This setting ensures your data is replicated to another region for protection. The other options for redundancy are locally redundant storage or LRS, which is the lowest cost option with basic protection against server rack and drive failures. Zone redundant storage or ZRS offers protection against data center level failures. And GeoZone redundant storage or GZRS is optimal for critical data. Let's explore the replication options. With locally redundant storage or LRS, your data is replicated 3 times within a single physical location. With zone redundant storage or ZRS, your data is replicated across 3 availability zones. And with geo-redundant storage or GRS, your data is replicated 3 times in the primary region and also 3 times in a secondary region, hundreds of miles away. Additionally, with GeoZone redundant storage or GZRS, your data is replicated across availability zones in the primary region and also to a secondary region. Geo-redundant storage or GRS is selected. Now that you've configured all the options for your storage account, we can click the next button, which is in the bottom left of the page. We are now on the Advanced tab. This tab is for configuring security and other advanced settings for the storage account. Here, the Enable Hierarchical Namespace option is for organizing your data into a hierarchical structure similar to a file system, which is useful for big data analytics. Access tier determines how frequently we expect to access your data. The hot tier is optimized for frequently accessed data, the cool tier for infrequently accessed data, and the cold tier for rarely accessed data. If we plan to access your data frequently, such as for everyday use, the hot tier is best. If we are using the storage for backup, or data that we don't access often, the cool tier is better. And if you're storing data for archival purposes that we rarely need to access, then cold would be the most cost-effective based on these scenarios. Hot is selected. Now that we have configured all the required settings, let's move into the next networking tab. We are now on the networking tab. Certainly, network access controls how your storage account can be accessed over the network. The options are enable public access from all networks, which allows anyone to access your storage account over the internet, enable public access from selected virtual networks, and IP addresses, which allows us to restrict access to specific networks or IP addresses, and disable public access and use private access, which limits access to private connections. Enable public access from all networks is selected. Here, a private endpoint allows us to connect your storage account privately from within your virtual network. This is a more secure way to connect compared to using a public endpoint. A use case for a private endpoint would be if you have a virtual machine within an Azure virtual network that needs to access the storage account. And we want that connection to remain within the network without exposing the data transfer to the public internet. We are now on the Data Protection tab. This is where we can configure options for data recovery, soft delete, and versioning. Enable soft delete for blobs allows us to recover blobs that were previously marked for deletion, including blobs that were overwritten. This prevents permanent data loss due to accidental deletion. Enable soft delete for blobs allows us to recover blobs that were previously marked for deletion, including blobs that were overwritten. The default is to retain deleted blobs for 7 days. Enabling versioning for blobs allows us to automatically maintain previous versions of your blobs. This helps with tracking changes made to your blob data. Now, do we want to proceed to the next step? The current screen is labeled encryption, and it's part of the Create a Storage Account process. It asks us to select an encryption type between Microsoft Managed Keys and Customer Managed Keys. Additionally, it gives the option to enable support for Customer Managed Keys and also has a toggle for enabling infrastructure encryption. We would like to leave the encryption settings as their default values. The next step is the tag section. So, we want to add a tag with the name, environment, and the value development. I will add that tag, and when ready, we can move to the next step. Now we are at the Review Plus Create screen. The screen is the Review Plus Create screen, which gives us a summary of all the selections you've made so far for your new storage account. This includes the basic settings such as the subscription, resource group, and the name of the storage account, as well as the advanced settings, like if SFT and TP are enabled, the access tier, and if we have enabled large file shares. I will now create the storage account. This page shows that the deployment of your storage account is in progress. It also shows details such as the subscription, resource group, and deployment start time. It also shows notifications related to the deployment process. The page indicates that your deployment is complete and the resource has been created. The next step is to go to the resource. This is the overview page. So that's how we can create a storage account, and this storage account can be used for blob storage,